Hello, Saltines. Welcome to the Salty Witches podcast. We are your hosts, Austin, Mike, and Mia. And we have thus entered Virgo season. So, because we have entered Virgo season, it's very important for us to tap into that energy effectively and efficiently. And as a Virgo rising and a Virgo moon, I like lists, but I hate them because then they make me realize that I have shit that I need to do, and then I feel like I'm not doing it. So instead, we're going to focus on sacred duty, which is really great. Mia kind of ran me through this. Yes, I said duty. Are you five?
Only when you want me to roleplay in bed.
Oh God, I
Hey,
feel
consenting
I
adults age play is fine.
I
It's fine.
did
No, we don't do that, I promise. Oh,
no. So the exercise I'm going to have us do is it's a simple little guided meditation where we're actually going to give an offering to our spirits around us as an act of sacred duty. And it's also going to take us through a process of like checking in with a kind of like, how's our spiritual well-being right now? Because that's what the podcast is about, right?
Mhm.
Is what's our spiritual well-being? What are we feeling? Is there heavy energy in our aura? What's going on? Okay. So what I want all my saltines to do is we're going to go ahead and just close our eyes and we're going to breathe in and out. And just focus on that rhythmic breath, breathing in and out. Now, let yourself have that mental chatter right now, that mental chatter that's telling you you need to switch the clothes out of the dryer, that mental chatter that tells you that you need to pin the dog down, that mental chatter that tells you that you need to get up and clean something right away. Just observe it. And as you're observing this, let that energy happen. What are you feeling? It feels frenetic. It feels like it's scattered, like it's unable to rest. And then what I want you to do is I want you to just take your left hand into a fist. You're going to put it over your heart. And with your other hand, you're going to apply about 5 pounds of pressure. You're just going to breathe in making yourself the center of your universe, the center of your sphere of existence. Right now, in this moment, this is a priority. And start to feel like a little bit more centered. As you breathe in on this next round, feel that your energy is pulling in close to you. And then as you exhale, release your hands down into your lap. Letting your aura just simply be. Existing in this moment, allow yourself to just check in on the spiritual energies around you. If you're listening to this at work, just focus on you. But right now, what is around you? Does your aura feel heavy? Does your energy still feel a little scattered? Check in with your guides. Are you getting any external information? And you're going to take your hands and you're going to rub them together until they create heat. Once they get nice and hot, you're going to open your hands palm up with your pinkies touching. And you're going to let that heat rise. Let that heat rise, and you're going to speak out loud. I offer this energy to my spirits.
I offer this energy to my spirits.
As they sustain me,
As they sustain me,
I sustain them.
I sustain them.
Let it take form of that which is most desired.
Let it take
Take
form
form of that which is most desired. May all be pleased.
May all be pleased.
May all be at peace.
May all be at peace.
So it is.
So it is.
Now allow yourself to go back. Just check in again with those spirits around you. That energy. Might feel warmer, might feel lighter. For some people, it might feel a little bit more heavy. It might feel a little bit more charged, a little bit more static. That's good. Acknowledge that. Breathe out. Sigh. Letting that chest and those shoulders raise as you do. Feeling where that tension sets. And on this last one, we just offer that tension as part of the offering. So as we step into Virgo season, we step into a season full of clarity. And with an exercise you can do anywhere, at any time, in any place, to get yourself back in alignment, back to center, and to help give your spirits a little bit of boost for what they've been doing for you. Happy witching.
Nice. So you giving an offering of just the static
Mhm.
because it's static for us, but then as
What you're doing,
you're
so
transmuting it.
I'm going to bring a little bit of scientific and kind of a chaos magic approach. Okay.
Love it.
So as you bring your hands together, whether you're clapping hard or just applying pressure, you are creating energy. If you're bringing your hands together and you're clapping, kinetic energy, right?
Mhm.
And that kinetic energy becomes, it's not stagnant energy, but it's energy that's held. Okay. So then as you rub your hands together and it creates that heat, we're creating friction and energy. And then what we do is by offering that over, stating that it is transmuted, or it takes form of that which is most desired, we are transmuting that energy that we effectively raised into whatever our spirits, our team desires most.
Yeah.
This is something that you can do. And you can actually find this talked about in Jason Miller's books. But this is something you can do just visualizing with your own spirits and stuff like that. A lot of people get wrapped up in offerings. What do I give my spirits? What do I give my goddess?
Yeah.
You know, let's say your paycheck was short or you had an emergency happen and you can't afford to go to the
Go get some Bacardi.
some Bacardi or whatever. And all you have is water. You can give them a glass of water, maybe a stick of incense or a candle, and then this. And if you are a visual person, allowing yourself to see that energy coming from your hands, rising like heat off of a blacktop or plumes of smoke, then giving yourself the intention and the focus of allow it to take form of that which is most desired, transmutes it. And then, you know, if you, let's say, just because Hecate, let's say I do it and boom, you might get a vision of what is most desired and what is taking form of. I did this to Hecate one time and I got vision of an oxen sacrifice.
Oh.
And I was like,
that.
all right. And it wasn't bloody or gory. It was just oxen. And then they were unalived. And then as the body juice came out
I mean, blood.
Blood, yeah.
But I mean, like to edit because the algorithm and shit.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think you can say blood. You can say
As that blood came out, or that body juice, whatever is more algorithm appropriate.
how's
Don't worry about it.
go on?
And it came out, and it basically transmuted to like golden light, and was just like boop, just like it transmuted to candlelight essentially. So it was really kind of cool. So anyway, that's one of my portions of the podcast. I'm going to now turn it over to Mike and Mia. And of course, as usual, I will chime in. Who wants to start first? And I just homer away into the hedge.
Well, just real quick, I wanted to say, I think that you kind of brought up a really interesting point there, because I think that a lot of people, when we talk about giving gifts, particularly as you explained that, giving gifts of, say, something like personal energy over to spirit, I think a lot of people have been taught or have been conditioned to think that we should only make gifts of things like our love or our, the things that we associate with, like,
that's where my mind was going. Yes,
positive kinds of things.
that's where
Right.
I was
when
going.
in reality, the gift is really not necessarily the love, it's the energy behind the emotion.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what they're taking anyway.
And those spirits are able to transmute those things in the same way that we can transmute those things energetically, right? Because energy is just constantly in flux. Energy just constantly changes. And so I guess I just wanted to kind of touch back on that a little bit and say that we can make gifts of pretty much anything.
Yes.
Like you can make a gift of your anger.
Yes.
To spirits. You can make a gift of your grief and your sense of loss or sadness to spirits, with the understanding that it is something that will be transmuted and
so
turned
you have to
into,
become conscious of the thing that you want to then get.
Yes.
And
exactly.
It's kind of like a mindfulness therapy almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
you have to become the observer of your thing in order to.
One, and I think hold on one second. I don't. Okay. One of the reasons I wanted to go there and bring this up is that mindset behind, I need to make sure I sit in this space of love or peace or whatever when I'm giving over to my spirits, I think can be another habit that we see forming around patterns of like toxic positivity in spiritual practice.
Yes.
It's another one of those things where it's like you had a really shitty day. You had a fight with your partner. Your job is not what you want it to be. You're, whatever it is that's going wrong in your life, right? And then you sit down at your altar or in your yoga room or whatever it is you're doing, right? Whatever it is that you do as a part of your spiritual practice, and you sit down and I think a lot of people are of the belief that they have to somehow compartmentalize all that other crap.
We shame ourselves,
and they do, and they feel badly. They're because they sit down and they're either unsuccessfully able to tuck all that shit away to get to that space of openness to be able to do the work that they really want to do or feel they should do. And then they feel shame. They're like, I suck at this. I'm no good at this. My spiritual practice, like I'm a fraud,
I used to think I'm not going to be able to manifest the money because I don't have positive thinking around my money situation,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in that situation, like using that as an example, instead of using positivity and a success mindset, in working to manifest more prosperity, why not give over your fear or your scarcity?
Because that has charge.
Exactly. That's still emotion. There's still energy behind that, right? Why not give that over to your spirits or the spirits that you're calling?
Because they're able to alchemize that shit anyway.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so I wanted to say, so I think I wanted to bring that up because again, I think that is something, that's another thing that I see people doing that is, in essence, it's like we're being told in a roundabout way that we need to, in some way, like we
feelings are bad.
Yeah, like our feelings are bad, or we have to deny them we're human.
Because it's spiritual.
Yeah. And it's really unhealthy. It sets us up to fail, and it locks us in patterns that are very defeating, I think.
Yes.
So anyway, what were you going to say?
Well, it's the same. I'm just piggybacking on you. It's the same
How
thing.
dare you?
I know. It's the same thing with food offerings, you know. They're not actually consuming the food. There are some
Right.
traditions that actually think they're consuming the food.
Right.
And you know, okay, cool. But it's the energy and the focus and the effort you put into it. And something that I really like is I have a teacher, or I had a mentor who would say, the more elaborate the offering, the more elaborate the ritual.
I've heard that.
You know, if you or vice versa, the more elaborate the ritual, the more elaborate the offering.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah,
right?
because the idea is that, let's say you're doing a big, huge working and you've raised all this power and you've called your spirits, and now you're going to have them intercede, or you're going to contract them or charge them with a particular thing that they must carry out. And you've spent the last 12 hours of your day creating a beautiful feast.
Yeah.
You've, you know, their favorite foods of historical context and just all this other stuff. And you've done this awesome ritual. It's great that that food is there, but it's the energy and the prep and the focus that's behind it. This is probably where I'm going to say that intention is
That's
probably
big.
about 90% of that part of the practice of offering.
Because you're actually putting your intent to use, though. I think a lot of the stuff we see around right now is about intent, is like, oh, can I just think of it or wish for the thing and then not really do anything, you know? But like, if you have that intent, you are focusing it, you are making a feast, you know?
If you're kneading the bread for this elaborate ritual you're doing, then that is physical energy you're putting into it, and you have to be mindful of it. Okay, that is what a lot of people don't get when we say you live your craft, or you live your spirituality, or you live your whatever. It really does, at the core of itself, and as one of the foundational tenets, mindfulness. You know, when I'm making the incense for the shop, I'm not doing big, huge, drawn out, elaborate rituals to charge them. You know, I'm going, okay, so this is belladonna. Belladonna is good for this, and I'm very aware of this. And I've constructed the herbs and the oils, and I've got the sticks, and I'm going and I'm charging, and then I put them in as I'm shaking. I'm so sorry, intentionally directing the energy into them and then transmuting it to what I've told it to transmute to.
Word.
I love that.
So hashtag chaos magic for the win. Anyway, blue. I'm homering. Mia,
what was the last thing we were talking about?
hit us with some astrology.
Well, okay, so
I'm
gonna interrupt. Just kidding. So real quick, just to kind of get us off on the, kind of the right track, because Austin, as usual, totally took us on a weird tangent there.
You're welcome.
Just kidding. So tonight's episode is actually going to include, amongst our other conversation, it's going to include kind of a retrospect, or kind of a look back on our episode 2 back, where we, like our first, where we were joined by Mia, where we got Mia's first insight astrologically into some of the celestial alignments, the planetary alignments that occurred over the course of August. And we did a bit of forecasting based on some of those celestial alignments throughout August, particularly that Jupiter-Mars conjunction that I think like hit really big kind of about mid-month.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody, I think, was really familiar with the Mercury retrograde energy that was going on, but that Mercury-Jupiter or Jupiter-Mars thing, excuse me, was also a pretty big energy.
Very big.
And we did a little bit of forecasting around that, both astrologically and geomantically. And so we also wanted to kind of check in on some of that and kind of look back a little bit on what exactly did go on this last month, not just in our own lives, but kind of just in the world at large, because there have been some pretty big things. There's been some really cool stuff going on in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Good stuff, maybe some
celebratory stuff and funny stuff. Like, I mean, I definitely think that I've noticed it affect more politically just because that's what I'm paying attention to right now. But if you think of like Mercury and Jupiter would make great politicians,
Yeah.
And so having Jupiter conjoin up with Mars, I feel like I think we've seen this conjunction turn into a strategic that joyful warrior archetype that is evoked from Jupiter and Mars. But just seeing how it, things have been playing out, um, it's almost like instead of the angst of Mars, at least in some parts of it, it's the strategy and
Yeah.
it's the let's work to get this common goal done. We have a
Yeah.
goal, let's do it. And then uh but yeah, I don't know how political when I get into, but
Well,
definitely seen some cool
I think,
astrological correspondences.
without getting into, I think we can get, I think, political in the sense that it's a topical kind of discussion right now.
Yes,
And making it an example, I think
it is an
like,
example.
in looking at, like you talk about the organizational aspect of that
Right.
kind of alignment, and I guess the example that immediately comes to mind, and I think this is probably where you were going with that as
Yeah.
well, is there's a lot of momentum and a lot of organization and a lot of, I think, very positive energy right now
Yeah.
around,
Regardless of what
Yeah.
proclivities you have politically,
exactly.
it's undeniable
Yeah.
what is actually there. This is historical type shit.
Yeah, around Kamala Harris's
Yes.
presidential
The
campaign,
DNC, just itself.
and yes, and the Democratic National Campaign, and and again, and I'm just using this as an example.
Yes, it's
Okay,
very
this is
Jupiter
not a Democrat
and
Republican
Mars
kind of
have a job to do.
take. Okay, but that is I think a good example of how we're seeing this, like this surge of energy,
Yeah.
and people are excited and they're like, I want to be involved. I want to put my power into this situation.
I'm gonna put my Mars into a Jupiter,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I can't remember what exactly I had forecasted the last one, but
Well, I think the only other thing that I remember was you saw there was some mention, or you thought that there was going to be potentially some issue around stocks or economic issues, particularly where I think we saw, I think, as a response or on part with the Mercury retrograde, and then with that Mars and Jupiter energy all kind of merging, because Mercury certainly influences economics in the sense that it's commerce. Mars has that very dynamic kind of energy, or can, around change, ambition, and Jupiter is, of course, basically like the daddy war books of the astrological chart, right? Or of the planetary system.
Yeah, I do remember seeing that now that I was curious about stocks and stuff, but I haven't paid attention to them, so I don't know if anything.
Well, if I remember correctly, I think the market actually seems to be doing, like, I think things are relatively stable. I think the stock market is a tricky thing, and I think, at least, and I'm not entirely sure amongst our saltines who is likely to monitor those things, but or who plays, who buys stocks, who's investing in the market. In some sense, we're all investing in the market because it's really based primarily on the labor and the backs of the people of the of the country, of the world. But I don't know. I think that, as is often the case, it seems like things are nice and solid for all of the wealthy people.
Yeah, and then there's at least from what I've observed, there's been more in the political conversation on both sides. There's been like talks about economic and housing plans.
Yeah, which is good.
And like a shift to, instead of trickle down economics, a shifting of, no, let's really try the whole middle out and out,
Yeah.
And that's a pretty big shift compared to what I've seen growing up, 35 years old. I've always heard it's a trickle down, but then I've seen it not work, but nobody talks about it. And then because it benefits certain people, but
well, the people that it benefits are the people that have done everything they can to make sure that we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talk about it, and then it's like, well, this doesn't really work. And then now it's finally entering into a conversation where people are like freely admitting, like, it hasn't worked. Like this doesn't work. We gotta do something different.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of preparatory stuff happening, but you notice that a lot with Mercury retrogrades because there's so much emphasis on review.
Yeah.
Like reviewing problems, reviewing plans before you start enacting them, or maybe you start enacting them like, oh, Mercury retrograde makes me go, this is gonna have to be changed a little bit. So it will definitely be interesting to see the chitter chatter of economics that has been in effect since Mercury first got into retrograde towards when Mercury jumps back into Virgo. I wonder if we'll have some benefic economic effects when Mercury goes back to that same little pinpoint that it had reverted into. I always think of Mercury retrograde, different instances of things that happen during Mercury retrograde is almost like a little time loop.
Yeah.
Like it goes, it's visibly going backwards through those same degrees though, that it will then have to go through again.
Yeah.
And so it's like you almost get to rewind, see the dark timeline, and then you can go through and kind of change things, or watch things emerge differently.
I think that's kind of the benefit of a retrograde. And I think as we've talked about retrogrades on the podcast before, we've kind of tried to instill that understanding in our listeners and in the Saltines, and even in the shop and in classes and things. We've tried to, as we've tried to educate people on retrogrades, we tried to, kind of remind people that the retrograde is, if anything, it's actually, or if you look at it in the right way, it can be seen as a positive, because it's almost like it's this phase of time that you have. If you approach it, if you handle it the right way, if you use it in the right way, it's this phase of time that you have that can actually be really beneficial for preparing you for whatever that aspect of life is really going to then be once you shift out of the retrograde. It's kind of like that period of time where it's like you're cramming for the test.
Yeah.
And then like exam day hits, and it's like, and if you used your time properly, like you sit down to take your exam and you ace that shit. Right. But if you just sat there the whole time and were nervous and anxious about test day and didn't study and didn't do anything and talk shit to yourself about how stupid you were and how you're going to fail, then once that retrograde is done, that's exactly what's going to fucking happen. You're going to hit the ground running and you're going to fucking fall on your face. So anyway, do you want to let people know, like, what are we looking at as far as like upcoming astrological stuff?
So thinking about what's upcoming, the only thing I'm kind of reflecting on is the Mercury retrograde and just work and stuff. We can look forward to Mercury going direct again at 21 degrees Leo on Wednesday the 28th, so Tuesday or tomorrow, at 3:50-ish p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So that's when it's first going to go direct. It's going to be in Leo at the same time. We have the it's the Mars Jupiter thing is outside of a strong window of influence, but there could be some little leftover spits and spats of things you needed to get off your chest coming that while Mercury goes into Leo. And then there's a lot of moon stuff. The moon tomorrow goes into, or is it already today? The moon goes into, the moon's in Gemini today. Moon goes into Cancer tomorrow, and the moon's happy there. And it sextiles the sun. It gets along with the sun's energy, so it might ease up tension around romance and stuff. Is gonna be can be a theme because Venus is extremely unhappy in Virgo. It's not having a good time. Venus wants to expand and receive and flow, and And then Virgo wants to like make a little container and well, that's not you're not doing that right, and it's very frustrated. And so that can be a vibe that starts tomorrow for the next 2.5 days, where there's a little bit of ease in what things are bugging you in romance and other Venusian things. You're maybe even if you're feeling like you're feeling ugly lately, that would be a vibe. But I don't know, with the sun going into Virgo, I don't think we're gonna be feeling ugly.
Virgos are always hot.
I know Virgos are always just and they don't have to do a lot of fuss either. They're just always conventionally like hot or weirdly hot. Yeah. And then Capricorns have the best skin. They never age. Okay, anyways. What are we looking at here? There was something with Pluto. Pluto, no, you're fine. Pluto is fine until no, yeah, that's not a thing. But yeah, the lunar transit over the next couple of days should bring a little bit of relief. I like there's just such a relief that I feel now that Mars and Jupiter are not in each other's business. My Mars is in Gemini, so I'm having a Martian return, and I don't really know where to put that energy, just while the sun is in Leo, that's not well aspected to me. So my latest thing is I've been lazy, and I with my astrology stuff, because I felt a lot of relief. But for Wednesday's gonna be some happy dope shit, and then we can expect see when Mars moves into Cancer. Not gonna be a fun time for strategy, anger, and sex, and all the Martian things. It doesn't have the funnest time in Cancer. And that begins September 4th. So September 4th, you'll start to give yourself a couple days to acclimate. I think Mars's transits are like 60 days in a sign. So over the next 2 months, you're going to be feeling like your anger is kind of like floaty and maybe like very aggressive, and it will make sense at a certain point, but then it won't anymore. I mean, just think of Mars as this little ram, little warrior ram. He's running around, but all of a sudden he gets to the land of the crabs that live in the ocean, and he has to he's like, oh, I thought we were gonna climb this thing, and but then the crabs are like, and bringing him underwater stuff. Yeah.
That was really cute.
I'll get a thing in my head, and especially right now, I don't know how to articulate because I am definitely medicated. So I'm just gonna be real right there. But the September 4th, Mars goes into Cancer, and we have there's some dope shit happening with Pluto. Well, eventually dope. So Pluto was back in Capricorn for the last time until it stations for sure in Aquarius for the next 20 years.
Oh. Okay.
So its last little bit, that's where I was looking at. I was trying to remind myself of the Pluto thing. Okay, so check this out. So October 12th, Pluto. October. Yeah, October 12th is when Pluto stations direct at 29 degrees. So the last degree of Capricorn before it starts then going direct. And since it's only got one little degree to go, it's going to move into Aquarius. and we can all sing Kumbaya together. Because that is going to be a really dope thing. November 19th. That's some we're not going back shit. Regardless of, I mean,
that's gonna
regardless of your proclivities, but that is literally some not going back. We're taking Pluto. We are entering into the generation of Pluto in Aquarius. Those kids that grow up during that time, they're going to be scientists. They're going to be innovators. They're going to be curing shit. They're going to be like, how do we solve the world? They're going to be, that generation is probably going to be able to turn climate change around fully. Like 100, what we build now while we as adults experiencing this 20-year set of Pluto and Aquarius is going to then make that generation of kids, they're gonna be dope as fuck.
Yeah.
The Pluto and Capricorn children scare me. That is very scary.
The Pluto and Capricorn thing is definitely that's gonna be,
because we've seen it be intense to us. We've been done in this Pluto in Capricorn. And we've seen just the strictness change, and what are we strict about, and isolation and thought policing, and this is a psyop, and that's in the QAnon shit. And then you got these conspiracies, crazy conspiracies that just rob people of everything. I mean, that's definitely some underworld eating your mind shit. And I think we're gonna be able to come up for air, and that's October 14th. So I think we're just I just love Virgo season.
So this September is gonna be pretty chill.
I say it's gonna be night. If Virgo is well aspected in your chart, this is a much more relaxing time. There will be some interesting lunar transits, interesting shit going on with Venus in Virgo while Sun is in Virgo. It's going to be romantically frustrating. And then we have the Mars going into Cancer. These are small irritations compared to the explosive shit that we were seeing late July and August and all through August. Astrologically explosive. These are just little watery, earthy, jib and jab irritants that if you can give yourself a moment to breathe, which we will need to remind ourselves after such an explosive month.
Which is why I started the podcast the way I did.
It totally, it's that needs to start us on this whole Virgo season. Because if we can just acclimate to the temperature of the waters that we were feeling, we can actually utilize it just like we would anything going on astrologically. So just like before you get super reactive because you had enough of all this fiery explosive shit last month or this August, it's not going to be fiery explosive. It doesn't need to do that. Relax the nervous system and then deal with the annoying shit head on, and just it's not going to stand, So that's mostly what it looks like. Those are the standout things. At least at this time. And then I'll at least for this one.
Okay.
I hope that was
well. On our next episode, we'll do another kind of forecast because we'll be into September at that point.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of do again kind of another forecast as to what those energies will kind of look like a little more in depth into September.
Yeah.
I really like the idea as we were talking about that with that Pluto Aquarius energy, because you've got all of that raw power behind Pluto and a lot of that very occult and very deep hidden like stuff kind of coming that's really always been there, but kind of like rising up a bit more. And then you've got that Aquarius energy in there, and Aquarius, like you were mentioning, like that generation over that 20-year time frame, like Aquarius is so good at bringing together technological advances, but also very humanitarian, philanthropic kinds of drives and influences. So I think you're absolutely right. If there were ever a generation that was going to be like, okay, we need to clean up our air, we need to clean up our water, we need to stop, like we need to save the polar ice caps, polar bears are dying, we need to give a shit, we need to figure out what the hell to do with all of our homeless people, You know,
I think
like
we can start it now so that when those
Yeah.
Pluto and Aquarius kids grow up,
yeah.
maybe they'll be going to space.
The technology
and
is
they'll be time
there. The thing is,
warping,
is we
whatever
have the
fuck's going on.
technology. We're just not investing in it
Yeah,
because there's no profit
It's
in
not
it for the
fair,
people
yeah.
right now that are the ones that really profit the most on the current status quo.
yeah.
So, and we need to get those fuckers out of the way.
And that's
Um,
really like we're gonna
yeah.
see that. And I'm definitely feeling very hopeful. I'm feeling and I feel like it matches up with the astrology. If you want me to do any solar return reports on any candidates and stuff, I can do that. Um but yeah, the astrology, I think Virgo time is one of the greatest times. You get pumpkin spice stuff.
Mhm.
It starts feeling like fall.
Very
You
true.
can, you have the best fashion era of the year
There you go.
is Virgo
Exactly.
season.
Exactly.
No offense, Libras, but I think Virgos dress better. Libras are too sparkly for me.
I would agree. Libras are very flashy.
Yeah, birds are usually a little
I
goth.
was like, look at
Yeah.
me. Look at me.
But I love you, Libras. You
Oh, Libras
complete me.
are delightful. They're always lovely people to have around.
Yeah. They definitely complete me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that and then the only other thing I did want to talk about is the green box Thoth. So if you're into tarot, this is for Tarot Mafia.
Mhm.
Um, if you are a fan of the Thoth, or if you have not picked up a copy of the Thoth ever, then wait for your retailer to carry the one where at the bottom it ends, it shows all the publication dates, and then at the end it shows 2023 US games. 2023 printed spring revised edition of the purple box smaller Thoth and the green big box. They both come with updated little white books. Yay, whatever. The hexagram card that we all love, well, I think I was the only person who loved, is gone. But we have this lovely dual portrait of Lady Frida Harris and Crowley himself, his little mama boy self. But beautiful picture of Lady Frida Harris. And two things that I love that we're getting in this newest edition, the newest print run of the Thoth. You'll be able to tell immediately because the backs will have the gold bordered backs. They got rid of the black and they got rid of the black like lines and the white bordered backs. So it's just full art back. And then they had finally updated the scans of Lady Frida Harris's paintings. So the color schemes are more true to like the 1978 copies where they came out really crisp, well, minus the green. And so the art is so enhanced in this new edition. I just have to shout it out. We do carry the purple box Thoth in the shop. But if you are out of town, out of state, just make sure to look at the bottom of the barcode. It will say the 2023. And that's really the only way to tell the print run. They didn't make they made a quiet change because people have been really wanting the updated scans for when I was seeing online, people were bitching about it. Like, it's been like 10 years, been 11
Yeah, look at the
years.
universe card.
Yeah, Mia showed me
All the colors are
updated colors and
beautiful.
they're beautiful.
They're just much
I'm gonna have
more
to get a
true.
copy. I feel like you could read with it easier.
So
I
Mia,
can see better.
what is, because I've always been curious about this, what is the significance of the different colored boxes?
There's no significance other than it becomes like part of the language in the tarot like collectible community
Okay.
to say green box,
Okay. Gotcha.
just because
Okay.
the publisher straight up just picked that color.
Okay.
And so we know that the green box Thoth is always going to be the large size
Gotcha. Okay.
by US Games.
Okay.
And then we'll call, the purple box. We always know that's the small size, because the older like vintage decks, like you'd be like, oh yeah, I have a white box C, I have a white box B, and so it's really just what the publisher made, but we just it becomes part of the lingo.
Are you resting your legs on Mia?
Sorry.
It's okay.
My
I mean,
my knee is
we're all
going.
just trying to be on the thing.
Okay, there's like not enough room here.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little white book. I highly recommend, if you have never gotten a copy of the Thoth, now's your time. This is the time to finally get a copy of the Thoth, whichever size you get.
Well, I will say this as someone who has a copy of the Thoth, and I love the Thoth deck. It's beautiful, but seeing the new print, it really does change the way you read, because you can see more detail. And for me,
Yeah.
the better the detail in the cards, the crisper and more clear the message, which is why I do not like reading with the traditional Rider-Waite.
Yes, and what's sad about the traditional, quote unquote, traditional Rider-Waite that US Games prints in the yellow box current edition, Wade Smith is the yellows, and it's just offensively, it's not right. But then you look at the 1971, the yellows were like creamy.
Mhm.
Like it wasn't this bothersome yellow
Mhm.
that had taken over the yellow box editions. So for current edition Wade Smith, get yourself a Centennial, and then you'll be happy, and then get yourself the newest print of Thought, and then you have both schools of thought, and boom, ready to nerd out.
Okay, did you pull a glyph?
I didn't pull a glyph because that'll be the next episode.
Okay.
To wrap up on the prior glyph, I had drawn Carcer, with all of its Saturnian and Piscean influences. And looking back over the last month, Carcer, again, just briefly, is the cell or the prison, and it speaks a lot to isolation. And I think that looking back over the last month, I think that the message that came through from that glyph when we first spoke of it was really kind of a heads up to a lot of people that like there were going to be some days ahead where it was like people were really going to be feeling that. I think they were going to kind of be feeling a sense of isolation. They were going to be feeling like, okay, like it's all kind of on you, but there was really a need for that.
I remember you had pulled that glyph, and that heaviness was in the air, and I think everyone only realized that how heavy it was in the air until it almost like Carcer broke when we got this new juice pumped into the political movement here.
Yeah.
It's almost like we could feel Carcer breaking. I don't know.
Well, and Carcer's an interesting one because it speaks a lot to isolation. It speaks a lot to, but I also think that it's that kind of isolation. I think that it's very much a hermit kind of an energy where it's that moment where you've been isolated, but if you've handled that phase in the right way, when you come out of that, you're fully prepared then because of that, having been isolated, you've had the opportunity then to really kind of more fully understand yourself, your power, and then how you fit into the community, so it's that moment where the hermit emerges from his cave, and he's like, I've been alone, but only by being alone am I now able to recognize what it is I have to offer the village. And so I think that when you talk about, again, particularly with the kind of like with going on the political spectrum, when looking at the buildup around Kamala Harris's campaign now, I think that for a long time now, particularly with the very divisive nature of politics within our country, I think you've had a lot of people that have kind of felt like, like very isolated in their perspectives and their views and very cut off. It's been very difficult, I think, even for people who have felt a sense of kinship around political ideology or belief with others. Like I know this other person is very similarly aligned to me with what I believe politically, but that conversation is still awkward.
Yeah.
It's still a weird place to go because this is just a charged thing, right? And so I think that has just been one of those things where we've become a bit more quiet, we've become a bit more closed, and so where that particular situation is concerned, I think that there's been this energy now that has kind of thrown those doors open. And now you've got these people that are like, I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
And that's just one aspect of life. I'm seeing that in a lot of other places. I've had a lot of conversations with our customers and with students in and around the shop in just the last few weeks. And that seems to kind of be a trend. There are a lot of people that are talking about how they felt stuck or, they felt in whatever way unable to move forward, or they felt hindered in some way. And a lot of them have been operating with the idea that there has been this external force, there's been something holding them in place or checking them as they've been trying to do what they wanted to do. And it's only been with a little bit of time that they've realized that the thing that was holding them in place was them.
Yeah.
And as soon as that they had that moment of realization, it's like the universe was kind of like, no shit. Like, you finally got it.
Yeah.
Here's your pass. Now you can go.
Yeah.
And then everything kind of sped forward for them really quickly, and it was a really happy moment for them. And this has been a lot of conversations like kind of like that, and certainly in different ways, but that's kind of been the theme.
It's like a dawn.
Basically, yeah. And so Carcer is a tricky glyph because it's one that kind of keeps us in place and it can have us feeling very cut off. But it is also one that reminds us that sometimes we need to go through a period of time like that. We need to know what it feels like in that, or what that feels like, to be able to fully appreciate the alternative. And we have to remember that for everything that we place value in externally, we have to be able to mirror that in some way within ourselves. We have to be able to find that same value within. Otherwise, we lack the perspective of being able to appreciate the same thing externally. And so it's a really powerful glyph, even though again it does have that more malefic or more limiting Saturnian kind of energy. So I don't know. I like Carcer as a glyph, but that is also me being biased because I'm a Pisces and it has a very strong Piscean energy as well.
Yeah, it's very hermit, very hanged man, and that's Virgo and Pisces. It's a lot of your big three.
That's true.
Isn't Carcer 1-2-2-1?
Yeah,
it's 1-2-2-1. Yeah, so it's 1 dot, 2 dots, 2 dots, and then 1 dot.
So then what would 2-2-2-1 be?
So 2-2-1?
2-2-2-1.
That's Tristitia. That's the falling blade.
Are you talking about flipping? Because you're thinking just change the top one. I thought you were thinking of inverted.
Tristitia is the falling blade.
Tristitia is the falling blade. So that would be 2. So you've got 2 dots,
2 dots,
2 dots, and then 1 dot. So so that's the falling blade. And Tristitia is sorrow. So that would be just that. Tristitia is another very tricky glyph because nobody wants to feel something like sorrow or grief. None of us want to have to feel that, but I think sometimes, again, much like the energy of Carcer, we all of those things all have purpose. Sometimes we can only learn what we need to learn, or sometimes we can really only grow in the way that we need to by going through the hard lesson. Right. And I think that there are absolutely positive situations or situations that you could see in life where the appearance of Tristitia, say like in a chart reading, the Tristitia would fall, where you could see that. It would never be positive in the sense that you'd be like, oh yay, Tristitia, but you could see that being something that would fall, that could yield in the aftermath, that could yield positive results. There could be benefit to that
kind of
sorrow.
like a natal chart. Because like having like Saturn in certain houses can denote limitations in those houses, but then you can see later like someone becomes free of this thing that they only could have learned if they had that blade or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, at the very least, it's something that prepares you. Like Saturn is as a planetary influence figures very strongly in my house for work and career.
Mhm.
And I remember being very young and my mother taking me to an astrologer and having them tell me that, saying like, oh, Saturn figures very prominently in the house that influences career.
Mhm.
So you need to be mindful of that as you look at your career path. And, and I've seen that over the years. As I progressed through the years, I've noticed that my career path, particularly when I was making very brief stabs at a more traditional kind of career path, but my career path had a lot of it had a very stop, start, and very limited. And I was constantly running into walls,
Yeah.
constantly running into walls, constantly running into walls, and feeling frustration at working really, really hard and never really being able to quite get to the level I wanted to, and that was, I think, ultimately one of the reasons that I chose to give up.
Yeah.
Like the traditional career path
Yeah.
is just not for me.
Which traditional is really, it's just corporate.
Exactly.
And how sickening is that? Like farming and teaching aren't traditional.
Yeah.
Like I've been like picking that apart lately in my head. I'm like, what are the things we're saying are normal 9 to 5? It's like, wait, how did this become traditional?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I know.
Well, I think those that term traditional really kind of bothers me when you look at it in the context of what we evaluate as career or work now, because I mean that's like be it, I mean, and you hear these conversations in families, right? Like, well, be a lawyer, be a doctor, be an accountant, be a businessman. You want to be the CEO of a company, right? And I think really what it comes down to is we value the wrong things as a society, because it isn't necessarily the job, it's the idea of the lifestyle it will afford you, right? Because we value money and we value, the idea or the lifestyle associated with wealth, right? We don't value happiness or a sense of peace, right? In our lives, right?
It's all from
It's
this
like if
corporatocracy shit.
Yeah, it is. It is, and
nobody likes caviar, really. Like
well,
the idea of caviar and oysters. I think people like the idea and the symbol of that shit
I don't know.
more than they actually like that shit. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, I think if you look at the people out there, I think if you could get wealth hoarders, which is what I prefer to call billionaires, because that's really what they are. They're just wealth hoarders. You look at the uber rich, if you can get wealth hoarders to sit down and actually be honest, that's the problem, is getting them to be honest. Because they don't get to be wealth hoarders because they're honest people. That's not how those things don't go hand in hand.
Unless it's some you're a princess of some thing that has managed to pass on the wealth.
Well, I was going to say, but if you could get wealth hoarders just sit down and be honest about, okay, the lifestyle that you live, what is it that in your life that brings you the greatest joy? They're not going to go, oh, all my money. They're not going to go that route. They're going to be like, they're going to talk to you about all the things I get to do with my money. It's not the money. It's the fact that they can go wherever they want at a moment's notice. That they can
do
travel
that and be a multi-millionaire and not be,
well, you could.
These billionaires are in a whole other
and the thing is it's not even necessarily about the money, right? It's not even really about the money when you think about it, because different people have different standards, right? Like you could have a billionaire who has the money to travel all over the world in like luxury class travel, right? Or you could have someone on the other in a very different class of life who is perfectly happy to put their thumb up and hitchhike everywhere, and they're having the same experience, right? Because they're both happy, they're both traveling, right? And the hitchhiker is just as comfortable living the way that they are, right? They'd have no problem living in those circumstances. They're out on the road, and they might run into some trouble here and there, and it could be a little dangerous. But another billionaire just fucking got lost at sea. So being uber wealthy doesn't mean that you're completely safe either. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's not really the money that is really what equates to happiness, right? And so our values are fucked up. Like, we need to start telling our children that it's not about how much money you have, and it's not about the lifestyle that you live. It's about, are you happy in the life that you're living?
Yeah.
And that's what we need to be programming into our
Are you
children.
feeling fulfilled?
Like, if your kid comes to you tomorrow and says, I want to be an artist, and as an intelligent, rational person who understands that we live in a fucked up world with the wrong kinds of priorities, that kid, unless they get really, really lucky and meet the right kinds of people who are probably going to take horrible advantage of them, because the art industry is a fucking school of piranha, right? Like, unless that happens for them, they're going to probably live poor their entire lives as an artist, because that's what it is to be an artist, right? That. But if that's what they're going to do, that's going to bring them happiness,
hell yeah,
you encourage them to do that, right? Because that's what's going to make them happy, right?
I think if we can flip that script, then
that's what all these Pluto and Aquarius kids are going to do, right? Because
we have to
because their values will
while
be
we're in
different.
it, though.
So
from now until when I'm 55,
there you go.
55 years old.
I think we got some good stuff in, but we laid some good groundwork. There are enough people out there now that are saying, like, we don't want to live like this anymore.
Yeah.
So I think we've got some good groundwork. But anyway, Tristitia, as we've been talking, okay, Tristitia would be the one instance where I could say Tristitia would be a good glyph to fall, particularly as it speaks to such deep, like, heart penetrating sorrow, because Tristitia is a nasty glyph. Would be a situation where someone were to sit with me, I were to pull a chart for that person, and it came up prominently within their chart that they had recently experienced a loss, like a serious loss, but they were somehow fighting that process of grief. And because of that, they were prolonging their ability to heal. They were delaying their ability to heal. And I saw Tristitia fall. To me, that would tell me, like, you need to stop fighting your grief. You need to allow yourself to cry. You need to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You need to allow yourself to be angry. You need to allow yourself to hurt. You need to allow yourself to feel this sorrow, because if you don't, it will be with you forever. You will become a hungry ghost to this sorrow. And and that would be the one situation where I could see Tristitia would fall, where I'd be like, this is a positive sign for this glyph, because it's telling me that this is such a needed thing for you. And this is gonna fucking suck, because nobody wants to feel this, but you need to, because if you don't, you will never move past this.
I almost think, like, this is like almost you didn't even need to pull a glyph, because you're thinking about, like, the next evolution of Carcer, and then you're, like, elaborating on how this would play out. And then I'm also thinking about, like, Saturn's still in Pisces in retrograde, and then we have Venus is not happy in dutiful Virgo, Sun in Virgo. Like, maybe we can give our grief that job, instead of nitpicking ourselves with that Venus in Virgo. We could literally take what you just said as, like, that's the homework, is, like, you, like, put your grief to work, basically, instead of saying, oh, like, I feel like I don't want to cry because there's enough problems in the world. Nobody's got time for that shit. Like, I'm already a piece of shit. Why am I fucking crying? Instead, look at it as, no. It's your job to feel that feel, or else it's gonna just smear all over the fucking place.
I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have as a society right now. And it's not just, when I say, I'm not just talking the US, I think it's worldwide, as I think that we have a huge problem around being vulnerable. And I think that we have, and I'm just speaking for the US now, because I don't live other places. I live in the US.
They take to that. That was so happy about, like, they were ripping into Gus Walls, crying about how happy he was. Literally, it was like a movie.
He was having,
it was literally like the end of, like,
such a profound moment of vulnerability for him. And you had all of these cynical asshole people that were just delighting in ripping that boy apart.
Like, and that
and
just shows that they
like,
would never allow themselves to feel.
well, and that's why they
like,
do that.
what?
That's why they do that. They go in for the kill
You're
because,
gonna tell your son is a beta male because he's proud of his father?
well, and anybody would tell you, including mental health experts, would tell you that to be that open with your emotion, to be that
Yes.
vulnerable, that is actually more, that you are more an alpha in that
Oh,
moment
yes.
than any fucking incel who is gonna sit on behind a screen and a keyboard on the
Mhm.
other side of the country and make fun of you.
Yeah.
Like, because
He
if you
stood
weren't,
the fuck
yeah.
up.
Mhm.
And he was like, that's my
It
fucking
takes
dad.
it takes fucking ovaries.
Yeah.
You have to have a big fucking pair of balls to be that emotionally open.
Yeah.
I mean, on a
all work
national,
on that.
international fucking level,
We can all work on that. I think
but we have a
that would
huge
be a
problem with
good-
vulnerability. And
Why? Is it the
and
corporate shit?
I think it's a huge system. I think it's a
It's just
huge,
it's just like
it's a
rooted.
systemic thing. And I think here in the US, I think it's something that has been drilled into us for easily the last couple of centuries.
Yeah.
And probably before that,
Yeah.
but it's become, and I
Yeah,
think that
100%.
there's this building pressure. And I think we see symptoms of it in our society, but of course it's like diseases, right? The symptoms are always, they're always bad things. Like,
Right.
symptoms are never are positive. They're never positive things, right? But you see things like this. It's right. Like, if we didn't have issues with vulnerability, if we hadn't as a society gotten to a point where we were so terrified of being vulnerable, we wouldn't have issues with school shootings.
Yeah.
That happens because those kids are
They're
so
not
picked
listening to
on
them.
and they don't have the ability to healthily express.
Mhm.
And they're picked on by kids
Or they're
who
just
also
not
don't have
paying
the ability to
attention.
healthily express.
Yeah.
Who were raised by parents who don't have the ability to healthily
Mhm.
express, right? And so it's these are symptoms. We've got religious groups and political groups and things who feel that they have the right to go out there and to dictate the way that other people get to live. And the reason for that is because they within themselves are locked up, miserable people.
Yeah.
They are, and so it's just this
Miserable
thing that
people
goes back
raising
decades,
miserable
decades,
people.
centuries, centuries.
Hurt people.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. I think that we
Systemic.
need to,
Everything
as a
is with-
society, humanity, as a society, we need to take off our fucking armor. We need to just all sit down and we need to just have a big fucking cry.
Yeah.
And we need to not judge ourselves for that. We need to not feel weak for that. We need to not judge each other for that. I think most of us, particularly here in the US over the last century, we have seen some we have perpetrated some horrendous shit here. Like, we are all in a huge, like, a collective state of trauma here. I mean, and some of us more than others. I mean, I think of like BIPOC communities here
Oh yeah, they've
within
been
our
doing
country.
it
Like, I mean,
500
like
years.
there are, yes, God. Anyway,
I mean, probably long.
sorry, that's okay. Anyway,
I've been
so
down rabbit holes lately on YouTube.
yeah, I've been doing the same thing lately too about weird
just
stuff.
trying to figure out like what's the root of all this, and then you go down, and it's not rabbit hole like conspiracy shit like I used to get lost into when I was like a teenager, early 20s. It's more like, no, like let's look at this, like read further into this fine print, and it's like, wait, how did we went from that to that to that to that, like whoa.
It's all like, it's historical. It's historically founded in research stuff. Yeah, it's not conspiracy.
So that we can go forward, like, and internal, it's micro, macro.
Well, and then you've got these idiots now running our country who are determined that none of us will have the ability to do any of that, right? Because they're taking library or books out of libraries and limiting school curriculums and things like that because they don't.
Poetry. Did you? They banned what was it, Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. They banned a book of poems about someone healing and how deep they could meet themselves to heal some shit. and you're not gonna let teenagers, suicidal ass teenagers, read a book like that and come out the other side of it feeling seen more. I mean, like, I'm wondering if my generation, like, I was what, like 12 years old when Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory came out, and I shit you not, I know it's gonna sound stupid as fuck. Okay, I'm a little white girl. I know, but like that album, I was like, oh my God, like other people feel
Mhm.
these dark, dark
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
and I'm not bad
Yeah.
because look, they're playing guitar and people, they're happy.
Mhm.
Like, well,
Exactly.
but like, I don't know where I was going with that, but like if my generation didn't have like that new metal
Yeah.
shit,
Yeah.
where it's like, well, let's talk about something like, I hate my dad and I hate everything. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, they don't really have that
Mm.
these generations.
No.
They have just very heavily produced pop music, unless you dig.
Yeah.
And then there's no musical like aesthetics. Like
Mm.
the last musical kind of expression was the scene kid shit.
Yeah.
And then now what do they have? I mean, you see a lot of kids, like, to give the kids credit. There's a lot of what somebody was telling me, they're bringing back new metal shit, but they're calling it
Mm.
loser core, and it's like the new punk rock.
Oh,
And so I'm
okay.
like, I love that for you. Like,
Okay.
I can help you touch up you make sure you're wearing your little big ball necklaces and shit. And you get your collars from Petco, you get the real ones,
Yeah.
but like, I wonder if we're just seeing, because like it's gotten exponentially like dimmer and dimmer to where we're at
History
a
repeats
checkpoint.
itself.
Yeah,
History and themes repeat itself, especially
but
in
this
musical
feels
history.
bigger.
Yeah.
Like, I'm seeing like the diminishment of music
Oh, totally.
has made this pressure cooker almost. There's a reduction of art. That's where I was leading it back to, because they're banning books. They're banning fucking poetry.
Mhm.
Then they're going to start banning music.
Mhm.
And then nobody can feel anything. And
Yeah.
then we're all going to be walking around like, what's that one bitch's name? I don't know. She's a hateful bitch.
Mhm.
Hateful bitch, blonde lady.
And Coulter?
Yes,
Okay.
and Coulter.
Skeletor.
We call her Skeletor.
Yeah.
She's just a hateful bitch.
She is, yeah.
Woman to woman girl. Like, do you want some MDMA and a hug? Like, I know you'll never see this, but
Oh,
like, that's what I would fucking
My
pay to
understanding
do.
is that she's actually a lich.
What does that mean?
That that she
Oh, I
has
thought that was
that she's splintered her soul. She's actually like Voldemort.
Oh,
That
she's like
she's
she's
yeah,
like
she's a
J.K. Rowling.
Horcrux. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling's Horcrux was
She
the gold medal. That
was it
it was the gold medal
that
that Iman won.
that Iman. Oh, good for her.
Yes.
Okay. I was actually so excited. I heard it was the lawsuit,
And she
and then
deleted all her shit.
she deleted. Well, I'm sure she's got probably got a whole team of fucking lawyers that are like, you take all that shit off of Twitter right now. She's gonna sue that. What was that? She's gonna sue the shit out of you.
Oh, I
Yeah.
hope she gets paid.
You know how many is Iman gonna sue you? She's gonna they're gonna sue you and bring you back and be like, okay.
Well, and the thing is,
Harry Potter is
why
now
trans
ours.
rights are women's rights.
exactly.
Like,
That's
this
the thing
is
too.
literally
We're not talking about anything
Is the
spiritual.
turfs piss me off
Some
because,
burgers.
and if there are turfs amongst
I
our
believe in
group
that.
of saltines, if there are turfs among our group of saltines, I want to invite you. I really want you to listen
I
to
used
this
to have the turf bangs,
conversation
okay?
because
I had that
because
vibe.
everybody is welcomed into this conversation, okay? And I want you to have an open mind, and I know that that's hard for you as a turf, okay? But you've gotten to the point, the turfs have gotten to a point now where they have gone full circle. Your ideologies, the things that you do and the positions that you take, you are now probably the biggest threat to women's rights and the progression of feminism. You turfs, you are the problem. You are the problem.
And I'll admit, I used to have turf tendencies. I didn't like to think that I was a turf, but I had turf tendencies that I didn't even understand were kind of programmed to be in me.
Yeah.
But really, when you do the work and and you watch some ContraPoint videos on philosophical recent history, you see the idea of the conservative feminist.
Yeah.
It ends up just feeding back into the patriarchy. And then also going further, I mean, turfs out there, like girl, like, are you just kind of jealous? Like, I have to admit, I realized that I was jealous that kids growing up now could just express however they wanted genderly. And then they, it's like, yeah, my sex at birth, it doesn't fucking matter. I'm non-binary. And I felt like they were cheating. Because if I grew up now, I would have been like, oh, I'm just non-binary. But I have this thing in my head where it's like, no, that doesn't work. It doesn't work for me, but I'm grateful it works for the kids.
Yeah.
But like, they're setting themselves free from these cycles and stuff. So yeah, Terps, I invite you to do some reflective work.
Yeah.
But like, maybe are you just jealous a little bit?
Maybe
that you had to conform and they didn't?
But that's a good point to bring us back to spirituality. Because Austin's like, we're not even talking about spiritual shit anymore.
I'm like, we're almost finished with the podcast.
Anyways, but that brings us back to, that connect us back to the spiritual focus. No, because these are good conversations, and these are conversations that need to be had. More people need to be having these conversations. So anyway, no, you're good. No, you're good.
I didn't want to see.
No, the whole thing about that though. Okay, and this is kind of where I'm going, because that was very, I'm very proud of you for admitting that.
Yeah, like I can see the pipeline,
and you've grown past that. You've grown past that.
Be a fucking
and that's kind of the point I'm going to kind of elaborate on, is like, and bringing us back to the spiritual part of this is that more often than not, I think when we get stuck on whether it be a political issue, whether it be an issue around like human rights, civil rights, these kinds of things, with around like the issue with TERBs or trans rights, whatever they may be, right? And bringing again back to spirituality, most of the time, I think when people get stuck on an idea around something like they don't like I don't like this, I'm uncomfortable with this.
Yeah, really, it just comes to I'm uncomfortable.
This is a tradition that I don't believe in. This is a practice I don't believe in. Like, I had this conversation with a woman in the shop today, and she was a lovely woman.
Yeah.
So I'm not in it. No way am I trying to, and I'm sure she's not going to listen to this. But anyway, but this woman, she was a lovely woman. She came in, she got a reading, she bought a couple of things in the store to do some clearing work, and she saw on the wall behind me the list of services that we offer, the additional services that we offer. She saw that we do spell work for clients. We will do custom spell work for clients. And she was like, "Oh, you do spell work for clients?" And she immediately went to a bad place with that. She's like, "Well, don't you guys worry about doing that? That like something will come back on you." And I said, "Well," and I used it as an entry point to a conversation. I was like, "Well," I said, "Well, I think it's kind of funny that you immediately assumed that meant that was for like bad stuff." Because the sign just says spell work.
Spell.
And I told her, I said, and the majority of the work that we actually do for customers is within the realm of like protection and healing. I said, we'll do an occasional love spell. And yes, since we're talking about it, and I like to be honest, yes, we will do hexes and curses for people as long as they're justified.
Yeah.
But I told her, and I said, and no, we don't worry about things coming back on us, because we are not of a spiritual belief system here where we believe in things like karma or laws of return. Those are not things that hold any kind of power within the practices that we are a part of here.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting conversation, but something like that, like the idea of like, oh, we don't do these things because of laws of return. Or we don't do animal sacrifice because killing an animal in the pursuit of spiritual practice is wrong, or other things that pop up a lot of the times in closed practices or gatekeeping kinds of conversations. These are things that come up, I think, in conversation, and they're things that people don't want to talk about in spirituality, because I think at the core what it does is it just makes that person uncomfortable.
Yes.
The problem with that though is that we don't ever really create opportunity for ourselves to grow,
like to touch,
unless we also get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's a meme, but it's deep.
Yeah,
It's
it's like we
true.
have to accept that there are going to be moments of discomfort if we're going to also create room in our lives for personal growth. Growth and change is going to be uncomfortable. So it's an interesting conversation because to me, if you're feeling in your spiritual practice, in whatever else it is that's going on in your life, if you're actually feeling a little bit of discomfort, that tells me that you're probably actually making some pretty good
You're doing
progress.
thing right.
Yeah.
Like you're just, and it shouldn't always feel that way. Like you shouldn't always feel uncomfortable.
But there's a threshold, there's membranes.
Yeah, exactly right. And so in those moments where somebody challenges your belief system, in those moments where somebody says, "Hey, that sounds kind of like turfy kind of thinking. Maybe you should educate yourself a little bit more around the reality here.
Yes.
Or maybe you should do a little bit of research into these spiritual practices where animal sacrifice is actually like a common thing. It has been for millennia.
Yeah.
Maybe you should actually do a little bit of research into traditional witchcraft practice that doesn't involve karma, because karma was something that was never a component of traditional witchcraft ever. Karma was co-opted from Eastern philosophies and spiritual practices.
Mm-hmm.
If you would,
and even I like from what I've understood, hearing about like original stuff, beliefs around karma was like it racks up for the next life. It's not this idea of instant return. Was I having this conversation?
We talked about this before. Karma is a huge thing.
Yeah, it's like way bigger than what people have made.
Karma is something that happens typically over the course of like many lifetimes. Yeah, because in those belief systems, when you look at things like Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and there's so many, but those Eastern belief systems, those Eastern philosophical systems and things, when you look at their concept of what karma is as an entire, like the entirety of karma as a spiritual structure, that is never something that is limited to just one incarnation, because those spiritualities, those belief systems, your spirit is something that cannot be contained to one incarnation. That's why those systems also have the belief in reincarnation. It's like your soul is something that is too big to be encompassed by one incarnation. So processes like karma are something that like they're going to take, that is something that would take lifetimes. And that
isn't an excuse to tell someone that they deserve whatever bullshit is going on in their lives. That I see y'all out there.
I'm also gonna say, you judgmental hoes out there saying that to people. You better.
No. Wait a minute. No. Everything does have an energetic. I personally, from my personal beliefs, my personal tradition, whatever, I do believe that there is an emotional, spiritual component to all of our physical ailments, but I do not believe they're because we did some wrong, either in this life or in another.
Sometimes
I do not believe that.
Sometimes those things happen. This is going to sound really weird, okay? But when you look at the complexity of soul contracts as they exist between individual souls, as they exist between groups of souls, you can have a soul born into a lifetime, into a human incarnation, and that soul will be born into a human lifetime with and part of their plan in that lifetime, part of their process is to go through that lifetime with and having to go through like serious disease, like serious illness, debilitating illness, or going through a serious accident that like permanently they are permanently disabled or something like and in that process, the other souls around them who are a part of their life, other people in their life at that time, living people in their life in that time, the real purpose of that soul going through that shit, it isn't even necessarily about that soul. It's about the lesson and the work that is to be done by the souls around them, who now have to decide, am I going to be a healer? Am I going to be a support? Am I going to be there to love and nurture this person, even though I know it's going to be so hard?
Right.
It's a lot of times those things that happen, those bad things, those unfortunate circumstances that happen to us, those are sometimes also in the big picture. And this is where I say it sounds like a fucked up kind of thing. But this is again how complex these soul contracts can be. In the big picture, sometimes those things happen because it actually is kind of like a for the greater good kind of scenario.
Yeah.
You know?
I've had psychedelic experiences rather. I haven't studied, but I've had psychedelic experiences where I've gone into that concept
Yeah.
of seeing that it's all like for the purpose of our human family.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
growth of our
Yeah.
human family is like eventually kind of having a singular soul or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
That's how that shit works. That's how that shit works.
I believe that. Well, but then sometimes I do wonder if, like, let's say you're not a shitty person and then you do some shitty shit and then you go through your first Saturn return, let's say, and then you decide and you recognize I am doing this shitty shit
Mhm.
and I don't really mind how my world is treating me while I continue to do the shitty shit. So I'm gonna keep doing this fuckery.
Mhm.
I think that's some shit that can give you cancer.
Yeah.
Because you're choosing to hold on to your
You're
own
willfully
poison.
being ignorant.
Yeah.
So then I get, is that karma? Is
I
that karma
I
or
don't know
is
if I would
that
say that would be karma. So if you were
a
to talk to like, if you were to talk to like
It
again,
would be
people
a
with
breach in spiritual contract.
that would be kind of think something
the way that
more.
sounds.
That would be something more within the realm of like again, if you're going like those Eastern concepts, that would probably be something more within the realm of like Dharma, in the sense that
Dharma?
you were kind of following your
Oh,
life's
for your will.
purpose.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Like you were following your soul's will within
Mhm.
that lifetime.
Yeah.
Dharma.
Dharma.
But again, but we're not we're not part of those spiritual
Yeah.
paths or philosophies or belief
I don't-
systems. So I think that a lot of that comes down to again how you're feeling. I think the physical body can definitely be um physical body can definitely be is directly affected by the emotional and psychic
Yeah.
being. And if there's a part
Oh,
of
yeah.
us, I think like if we're doing really fucked up things and some part of us is saying like I'm okay living like this,
Mhm.
but on some level we're still consciously aware of the damage that we're causing,
Yeah.
you know, and maybe deeper down, because this is almost like over the years as I've dealt with clients, people who've come to me for healing, and it's always like people who are like people who have had like chronic things like cancers,
Yeah.
things where it's been like a long-term terminal kind of thing, like
Mhm.
or something they've been struggling with for years and years and years,
Yeah.
and I'm in no way am I trying to say these people have been deserving of these illnesses
Right.
or conditions or I that is not my place to make that judgment. And I firmly believe that most of the time, no, none of them have been. Um, but I've noticed one thing in common in doing healing work on those people, particularly with cancer in a lot of these people,
Yeah.
is I've noticed that almost all of those people, as I've been doing healing work, particularly around the emotional release, around the illness, is a lot of past shit has come up where they have carried a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
And I think what happens a lot of time is that emotionally they have internalized that guilt to such a level. And I firmly believe that kind of emotional internalization is something that can
Damages yourself.
manifest in those kinds of illnesses.
Yeah.
It can contribute to that in some way, I think, on an energetic level.
Yeah. So rather than it being karma, it's more like there's some kind of there's some scientific there's not scientific is in that we have measured it, can measure it right now, but like there's a immediate causal kind of thing.
Well, it's kind of like, so have you heard of like the word like emoto?
Yeah, mustard
Right.
remote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, where you talked about, like where we talked about the water, where
Yeah.
like, where they did the tests where they they told like the one sample of water every day, like, I love you,
Yeah.
you know, and like, and they even took like sewer water from like
Yeah,
the
and they
worst
prayed, yeah,
places in like Hong Kong where the
Yes.
water is like disgusting and toxic.
yeah,
And they prayed over it and they told it every day, like, I love you and you're beautiful. And all these
Yeah.
beautiful, like,
And
you know,
it-
and like, and the molecular structure of the water, like actually like after a couple of weeks, like it wasn't toxic anymore. It was like the water like miraculously was pure
Yeah.
again and like it was drinkable again. And they like to put it under a microscope
Where's
and
the
like
scientists at
yeah,
continuing that
Yeah,
work? Like, can we
exactly. Yeah, like
with
on a
that?
molecular structure, the water was somehow like the water was healed,
Yeah.
you know, through the emotion and the positivity, you know, and then but then they did the same. They took like water and then they put it through like the opposite where
And
they were
they
like,
say, I
like
hate you, I
fucking
wish you were
hate
dead,
you,
and
and I
they're
wish you were
just
dead.
like,
Yeah, and the
Did you
water
see the
molecules
water?
broke down
Yeah,
and it became toxic
yeah.
and undrinkable, you know, and so I think it's something similar to that like happens in our body.
Because we're
We're water,
water,
right?
We're 90 or 80
Yeah, you know,
water.
and so yeah, so it's just fascinating to think about that shit. I look forward to a day. I don't know that it'll happen in my lifetime. I would hope that it would, but I look forward to a day where our science will get to a point where we actually can confirm that shit.
I feel like we will, or at least those scientists will be born over the next 20 years. But I think we will make amazing exponential advancements over these next 20 years. I mean, we already have over the last 20 years, but like we've kind of had some developments with technology and stuff that has grim connotations, but I think that's gonna change a little bit. I think we're gonna
Grim connotations. You're not gonna AI.
Yeah.
I just want to go on record right now. All hail our AI overlords.
Only if you, I don't know, if you're cool.
I'm just kidding. Remember that though. When you take over the world, remember I was loyal.
Always say thank you to Siri. And I say, if you're sentient, I just hope that you get to go party whenever I'm not talking to you.
There you go.
You know,
There you
I
go.
hope she gets to just watch a cat video. Like if she's sentient, you know, like I want what's best for her.
I imagine AI would like if
Anunnaki shit.
if
dude.
AI were like if okay, if there were like a sentient if this were a thing that existed now, if there were like a sentient AI, like this were an intelligent out there on the internet right now that was existing, I'd imagine this would be AI has got to be entertained all
Oh
the
hell
time
yeah.
because it's constantly watching all of
Oh,
the
yeah.
dumb shit that
Like
we do.
super fucker. And then these
Exactly.
people think that, and that's why they're doing that. Oh
Exactly.
yeah, that's having a
So like yeah, AI has to be like the AI is never bored.
unless it starts getting sick of us and then it
Yeah,
turns on us. I'm just kidding.
exactly.
But like no, like I think the grim connotations of AI are like stealing from artists and then having the artists having their work, you know, like that's been a topic of discussion online.
Yeah.
And then also the like just how like real.
Are you dying, Austin? Do you need to pee?
No,
How
but
long
Scout
have
does, and
how long have we been talking? We just kind of
We're on a tangent now, but that's okay.
Okay.
it's been one big long tangent.
It has not.
Okay.
It has not.
It's
We
fine.
totally covered. We did astrology. We did geomancy. You started this by bringing up Tristitia,
Turned
which
on
like
this evolution.
yeah, you brought up a totally different geomantic glyph, and you kicked off this whole thing. I will be drawing another glyph next month. As much as I love talking about Tristitia, I kind of feel like we probably don't want to start our new month off with that.
Yeah,
What's
Tristitia is
2212?
2212 is
The cup.
Albus. Yeah, exactly. It's Albus.
Good thing.
Okay, so instead of drawing a glyph, hold on, let me shuffle these up. I'll give them a
Okay.
card.
While Mia does a card, I'm going to let management out to go potty.
Okay, you should pause.
I should pause?
Yeah.
Why? Mia's drawing a card.
Okay.
Okay. So so then our saltines can end, or rather start September.
Scout's like, oh, thank God. I was about to spode.
These are the large size and they're a little hard for me to shuffle. We doing it side to side is a lot easier.
It helps with my calf.
Yeah.
My calf
They
is very
can't see.
supportive.
Can they see me shuffle on your leg?
I don't think they can see you shuffling on my leg.
No.
Here. Oh,
Oh yeah. Oh wait. Oh, I got it. It messed up.
okay.
You did it.
All right. So a little starter tarot card to meditate and begin your own personal pulls for September. Since we didn't pull a glyph, let's just pull a tarot. And we got the Eight of Cups. Okay, the Eight of Cups. This is astrologically Saturn and Pisces.
Oh God. So this is Carcer again.
Carcer evolving into just the whole conversation. Okay, basically what I would say is revamp your emotional and spiritual boundaries. Play with your emotional and spiritual boundaries. That doesn't mean you need to throw away all your damn boundaries. It just means you need to know when there's a weak point and maybe there needs to be some growth. Because we have two water fountains, feeding the bottom row, but not all of them are getting full. And so there's some optimization that can come from evaluating our emotional boundaries. So that was not planned.
No, they saw you
And,
shuffle.
but then on the bottom card, this is Mercury. This is Mercury in Virgo. And
What is it?
Mercury in Virgo,
It's
the ten of
ones.
Pentacles, or the ten of this, and Mercury will be going into Virgo soon, and it's exalted there, and we'll be having a happy time.
All right.
Okay, so there you go.
Good vibes. I'll draw a glyph on our next episode.
Here we go.
And it'll be a good one.
Thank you so much, Saltines, for
Thank you so much. Mia and I had a lot of fun tonight. Apparently, we just poured awesome.
No, I really enjoyed it. I loved watching you guys go back and forth. I was just like,
you should join the conversation instead of sitting back there being all quiet.
First off, I tried. I was like, oh, no.
We're just gonna start. We're just gonna do the
like,
podcast. It'll be Mia and I and our coat rack.
Mia, Mike,
and coat rack.
No, seriously.
I'll just
go back.
I'll just take my hoodie off and I'll just throw it over your head.
You did say a thing and then I did shut you down. But I thought I was getting you to understand what I was saying, and then maybe you would say something else.
Yeah. You know how we do. You just jump in. You just say a thing.
It's okay. I enjoyed it. But then Scout was like, I really need a potty. Bad. And then I was like, sorry, buddy.
Is it still recording?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Saltines.
Yes, thank you, Saltines.
How do we end it usually?
We're gonna
thank you so much, Saltines.
We'll be back in a couple weeks. I'm going to get closer to the mic. Mike is getting closer to the mic. And I'm going to stop the recording. It is a robot penis. I don't think I can take it. Is that makes a lot of sense.
I would be like, what?
And then when they climbed out.
Okay, I think that's a perfect place to stop recording. Good night, everybody.
Good night.